Ever been driving and you just get this, like, feeling where you're absolutely sure the person in the next lane is totally oblivious to some, impending doom you're both hurtling toward?
Oh, yeah. It's wild how much our own, baggage gets thrown into the mix of what we pay attention to when we're behind the wheel.
It's like we're all reading from different instruction manuals out there.
Totally.
Which is what makes this research paper we're diving into so interesting, honestly. It's all about how we as drivers decide what a situation even is, those moments that grab your attention when you're on the road.
And it gets way more nuanced than just red light, or someone needs to learn what a blind spot is.
Right. So to get into the nuts and bolts of it, researchers basically, they showed people a bunch of videos of driving scenarios, city streets, highways, those winding country roads, the whole shebang, and told them to hit a button every time they felt like, boom, new situation starting.
And they got sneaky, too.
Yeah.
They had them constantly rating the complexity of what was going on.
Yeah.
So we get this whole extra layer of data about how much mental gymnastics our brains are doing at any given moment.
Okay, are you ready for this? The range of answers they got for how long a situation actually lasted, bonkers. I'm talking some people registering a new situation every couple of seconds, others just cruising along for minutes at a time. Wild.
Yeah. To give you a sense of the spread, some folks looking at a simple junction, right? They clocked the situation at a measly 8 seconds. Others, same junction, they felt it was a whole 34-second ordeal.
See, that's a way bigger gap than I would have guessed. Makes you think about those times you're internally screaming, "Come on, MVE!" at the car in front of you.
While they're probably just chilling, listening to their favorite podcast, clueless to your road rage brewing.
Exactly. But here's the kicker. It's not just what's happening outside the car, right? This is where it gets really interesting. What's going on inside our heads, our thoughts, our anxieties, even stuff from way back, it all gets stirred into how we define a driving situation.
Oh, for sure. Our own personal histories as drivers, it's a huge factor.
Totally. So the study digs into some surprising internal factors. Like, first up, distractions. And I'm not even talking about texting here. Even just, spacing out, mentally planning dinner, that kind of thing. It can really mess with how we see what's going on around us.
It's like our brain goes on autopilot for a sec, thinks everything's cool because we're not, actively freaking out. Then, bam, reality check. You're halfway down the exit ramp wondering, how did I get here?
Oh, man, tell me you haven't done that. Especially driving a route you know by heart. Mind starts to wander. Next thing you know, you've sailed right past your turn.
Happens to the best of us. And you know what's funny? The study found that our own actions when we're driving actually make us more alert, not less.
Really? So, if I'm the one making a move, my brain's more engaged.
Think about it. Passing someone, taking a tight turn, all those things where you're actively in control.
Yeah.
Our brains perk up. They're like, whoa, okay, things just got real.
It's like our internal pay attention light starts flashing.
Basically.
Like our inner alarm bells get a little test drive, but there's this whole other layer, right, where it's like our past experiences, even just, our anxieties, they can really color how we experience a situation when we're behind the wheel.
Oh, absolutely. Think about it. You have a near miss, right? Maybe at a certain intersection or something. Years later, your brain might still treat that whole area like one big, long situation from the second you're even remotely close to it.
Like a phantom brake pedal appears under your foot, even though you're just trying to make it to the store without incident.
Exactly. Our bodies totally hold on to that stuff. Speaking of anxieties, though, driving in a new city, when everything's unfamiliar, I bet that's a whole different beast than just your regular commute.
Oh, for sure. You're on high alert.
Right. And the research actually backed that up. Just being in unfamiliar territory can make every little turn, every lane change feel like a brand new situation. Because, your brain's working overtime to process all that new info.
Got to keep up. So that's all the internal stuff, right? The anxieties we bring with us into the car.
Yeah.
But there's the whole outside world, too, the actual things happening on the road. That's got to play a part.
Yeah, no, for sure. The study dives into those more, let's say, obvious triggers that shape how we react to.
Okay, so what are some of the external factors they looked at? What gets us honking our imaginary horns, so to speak?
Well, some are pretty straightforward, right? Like traffic lights.
Makes sense. Red light means situation, green light means go.
Right, it's a universal signal, pretty much. Everyone gets that. Same goes for other drivers doing, the unpredictable stuff. Someone slams on their brakes out of nowhere.
Instant situation. Your heart jumps into your throat.
Exactly. It's like our internal alert system goes, hold up, something's not right here.
So those make sense. Were there any surprises when it came to the external factors, though? Stuff you wouldn't necessarily think of.
Actually, yeah. While things like traffic lights, crazy drivers, those are the obvious ones. Even subtle stuff like construction zones, or get this, parked cars. Even those could mess with how people perceived a situation.
Parked cars, really. I mean, they're just there. What's so situational about that?
See, that's our brains being brains. Hardwired to scan for potential threats, even if it's not like an immediate, oh no, gonna crash kind of thing.
I guess a parked car could mean a door suddenly swings open, or a kid runs out, or who knows.
Exactly. It's that like split second, what's the worst that could happen calculation. And in busy areas, those what ifs are everywhere, right? Especially if the study focused on urban environments, which I think it's...
Yeah, right. Cities, yeah.
Wow.
So much going on. Which probably explains another finding from this research, which is this. The more complex the driving environment, the shorter people's perceived situations became. It seems kind of backward, right? You'd think more chaos equals longer stretches of stress.
Yeah, it does seem counterintuitive, but it kind of makes sense when you break it down. Imagine driving in a packed city center versus just, like, cruising down an open highway.
Okay, got it. Two very different vibes.
Right. In the city, you're constantly reassessing. Your eyes are darting all over, making tons of tiny decisions. There's not really a moment to relax because everything's changing all the time.
So it's like our brains are going, too much input, everything's a situation. Okay, never mind, that one's over, new situation, focus.
Exactly. Our brains are efficiency machines at their core. And when we're in predictable environments, like that long highway drive, we kind of zone out, right? Our minds love a pattern they can settle into.
Highway hypnosis is real. I've been there.
Right. But as soon as there's some change construction, traffic jam, even just a curve in the road, boom, our brains snap back. New situation. Time to pay attention.
It's like that thing where if everything is bold, nothing is bold. If everything's a situation, nothing is, at least not for long. Which kind of makes this whole idea that we're each building our own reality when we drive even more true. Yeah.
Totally. Like we each have our own little bubble of perception, our own event horizon on the road based on all this internal and external stuff.
That's such a cool way to think about it. We're all driving around in our own little personalized simulations. No wonder it can feel so unpredictable out there.
And here's where it gets really interesting when we start thinking about the future of driving, with self-driving cars and all that.
Right.
If each of us has this like personalized bubble of perception, how do we design cars that can keep up?
Whoa, yeah. So we're not just talking about cars that are smart in like a vacuum, but smart about how humans already think.
Exactly. Like imagine a car that's trying to warn you about something, but it doesn't get that in your head. Based on your past experiences and all that, it's not actually a big deal. That's not going to be very helpful.
Right. Bad warnings at the wrong time just make us tune them out even more.
Totally. So if we can build systems that are like more in tune with our own individual event horizon.
A little personalized simulations, yeah.
Exactly. Then we can actually make that whole transition to more automation way smoother. And more importantly, safer, right? Which is the whole point.
Absolutely. It's like instead of fighting against human nature, we can design cars that work with it. It almost makes you wonder if like future cars will have some kind of driving personality setting or something.
Oh, interesting.
Like the car learns your quirks, It's like, okay, this driver tends to zone out on this long stretch of highway. Maybe I should gently remind them to stay focused. Or this one's a little more cautious. Let's adjust the following distance a bit.
You know what? You're onto something. Researchers are actually already looking at things like AI and, those biometric sensors. They keep track of what the driver's actually doing mentally in real time. Wild stuff.
See, that's what I love about all this. Makes you realize we're not just like stuck with the way things have always been done. Who knows what driving will even look like in 10, 20 years?
For sure. And that's why this research is so cool. It's not just about the tech itself, but how we can use it to actually understand the human brain better.
To make life better, safer, the whole 9 yards. So as we wrap things up here, if there was one big takeaway for our listeners, what would you say it is? What can we do with all this, event horizon knowledge today before those fancy future cars arrive?
That's a good one. For me, it all comes down to self-awareness, honestly. We all have those little things, right? Those moments where we're more likely to get distracted, or maybe we're overly cautious in certain situations.
Oh, I'm totally the overly cautious one.
Right. But the key is, if we know that about ourselves, we can adjust accordingly. And just knowing that not everyone sees the road exactly as we do, I think that alone makes us better drivers, safer drivers for sure.
It takes the pressure off a bit too, right? Like, it's not that I'm a bad driver for being a little jumpy, it's just how my brain works.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not about being like hyper aware all the time or stressing over every little thing. It's more about being, mindful,
Yeah.
intentional,
Love that. So basically, know thyself, driver.
pretty much.
Awesome. Well, this has been such a fascinating deep dive. Honestly, gave me a whole new perspective on like something I do every single day.
Glad to hear it. It's always fun to like take something we think we know and then just totally flip it on its head.
Right. But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with one little thought. Next time you're out there driving, pay attention to what your triggers are. What makes you feel safe or anxious? What's your event horizon look like?
Oh, I like that. It's a great way to like actually put this research into practice. Because the more we understand about ourselves as drivers, the better equipped we are to handle whatever, the road throws our way.
And who knows, maybe we'll even be able to give those future car designers a little help along the way.
Right. They'll be thanking us. Finally, some good data.
Exactly. All right, thanks again for taking this deep dive with us. And to our listeners, until next time, drive safely, stay curious.